So I guess I would start by
Oh,
asking,
that's cool.
how are you feeling about voice work recently?
Um, it's been very up and down. I haven't been able to focus on it really until 2 weeks ago. Oh, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. Yay! So, um, that was interesting. So life has
GG
been
on the
just very
diagnosis,
hectic.
by the way.
Thank you, thank you. It's harder to stay hydrated now, but I'll take it. Uh,
I'll do it.
but in terms of voice work, the times I have practiced, I suppose I felt like um it was hard to really describe what I was going for. So I found myself some kind of a reference in terms of stylization, I guess, that I'm going for. I just found this YouTuber. I was hunting for like days, but I found this one guy that really had the type of cadence I was looking for. Still like very expressive, but um, but a pretty good reference,
Yeah.
especially when you've got like hours of content. Don't know what to do with that though. So
Cool. Why don't we talk a little bit then
yeah.
about some personality related features? Back in March, we had a lesson that was about sort of those body implying features of size and weight. And I think in general, we know like the general strategy to approach those changes. I've heard you achieve, a larger, heavier sound, but kind of understanding that like it is freaking hard to aim for a heavier sound all the time, and that kind of requires some endurance building in a way that, other voice work doesn't necessarily. So chill on kind of like touching base with that stuff and then taking a look at some of these personality implying features so that we have a sense of what to listen for and how to approach that. So I guess let's start with a quick review of some body implying features, and then uh, an overview of personality stuff. And then maybe the specific voice sample. Do you have a link to that YouTuber by any chance?
Oh yeah. I can find it really quick. He is called DUI guy. So I tried to find someone that would use similar terminology that I would, because I have a very difficult time keeping up the voice I want at my job specifically.
Huh.
So yeah, yeah, like it's in a lot of situations, like whether I'm talking to my boss or even worse if I'm talking over the phone, especially with a stranger, like if I really want somebody to like me, which is often, uh it all the techniques I have kind of go like down the drain.
Yeah. Um, Increases in vocal weight and size. Basically, these body implying features that are related to androgenization are wired in our brains in a way that help us um, perceive kind of aggression in other people. And what we note is that even when we hear these sounds, like even a masculine speaker who starts to like, if some dude is trying to be like, oh hey, I'm so sorry, like, wow, it sounds like you've had a really rough day. If we start to hear sympathy and gentleness in the voice, that's going to be signaled by a change in vocal weight often, right? So when we start to get heavier, sometimes it can feel like, am I being rude to this person? Am I being aggressive in this conversation? Am I being too loud? Right? And those subconscious anxieties sometimes cause us to like kind of pull punches. Does that make sense?
It makes absolute sense.
Yeah.
It definitely does.
Yeah. I think in general, would you say that your voice feels a little heavier now than it did, 6 months ago or so?
For sure. And I've reduced a lot of my anxiety in terms of practicing weight. So that is something that has improved.
Cool. Cool.
It's like I've kind of normalized it for myself. I don't know if I mentioned that to you before that I was a little thrown off when I was first introduced to weight, but I'm a lot better now.
I love that. Now in like a work environment, do you often find that you like default to like, oh, it's time for customer service voice, time to get a little higher, a little lighter, a little smaller, and like be like, hello, how can I help you? Right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I am the worst offender of customer service voice, you know? Um
Would it be like super dysphoria inducing for you to show me customer service voice right now?
no, I think I can try it. Let me just put myself there. Okay. Oh wait, I was about to dox myself with like the phrase that I most
Oh
commonly
no, no
use.
doxing.
Um no. um but basically I usually answer the phone with hi, this is Vaan from Wonderland. Or I'm calling because of that's usually how my customer voice sounds like.
Okay.
It's very cheerful, very upbeat, but also light.
Yeah,
Light
I
as
would say,
hell.
well, yeah, not light as hell. I actually wouldn't say. Let's listen back to that. Maybe I take the replay in time.
Huh.
Shit, I was late. Can you try that one? Can you show me one more time? That same uh little intro.
No worries. Good morning. This is Vaughn from Wonderland, and I was calling to ask about a client of mine.
Cool, cool.
That's like a very common sentence,
Okay,
yeah.
give that a listen and tell me what your perception of the sound is.
Alrighty. I don't know if it's because I'm not actually there, but or even if I'm like perceiving my own voice with a little bit of bias, but there was a lot more weight there than what I was expecting. I'm wondering if the dynamics in the pitch is what usually gets me clocked because I get clocked a lot on the phone all the time.
Okay.
It's
So you're finding that
yeah,
like you'll call, some client or whatever and you'll get casually misgendered. Just
all the
okay.
time. It's from the clients, ma'am, from someone's like, "Oh yeah, let me just transfer you to this person, ma'am." Like just so it's unfortunately it's pretty obvious just because of all like the honorifics we use in that workspace.
Yeah.
So yeah.
To to be clear, based on my perception of this sound, I don't necessarily, I guess like I was expecting, I think like B is also saying, like I was expecting like a hard like hi, this is Harth and I'm calling to talk about my client, blah. Like I was expecting like a really hard customer service shift. And honestly, I think that this is a little lighter. Probably the pitch contour is a little bit different than what you want to target long term, but I'm not hearing necessarily any kind of like
Hmm.
major change in weight here, or at least not something that would get me super nervous. So let's see if we can make some adjustments here that might assist. Right. Cool.
Right.
Right. Sorry, your weight just like popped out a little bit
I
just now. Uh,
I'm so
please
sorry.
never apologize. Please do not apologize. Can you show me what does your peak weight, like heaviest sound like?
So, you want me to show you
Yeah,
my
like even if it
extreme,
feels maybe
basically?
a little bit shouty or a little yelly or something, what does it sound like?
Okay. Usually I do it when I'm singing, so it's like I'm trying to like think of like something to say. Um, I'm
No.
sorry. I'm like
Let's just try
freezing up a little
counting.
bit.
Can you just go like 1, 2, 3 and be as like heavy as you can?
Okay. Yeah. One, two, three,
Yeah.
four.
So that has a little element. I mean, if I do the same thing at the bottom of my range, I also hear a little element of like try hardness, right? We can hear some of the sound of effort in the sound, just because I think it's fucking hard, right? Being heavier is, um, it is vocally demanding and taxing in a way that our baseline sound just isn't. But hit play and tell me what you think of that sound.
Okay. I think I think I could and have been heavier than that, but it's definitely a step up from my baseline. Um, Actually, I don't know if it's just being here, but my overall pitch right now is a lot lower than it usually is when I'm interacting with other people.
Cool.
So I'm
Yeah,
actually
you're
pretty happy about that. I thought I was going to be like super nervous in this lesson, but
you're sounding relatively low pitch. You're sounding relatively heavy. Like honestly, um, I have a hard time if I heard your voice. I have a hard time confidently like I would be like what are these people hearing that is different than this sound that is causing them to misgender you because yeah, if I heard this voice on a random phone call, um it's hard for me to envision this coming out of of a woman, you know, like I would be like really struggling to reconcile that. So maybe the pitch is
mm,
different. Maybe yeah, I mean like I don't know. This is a case where I imagine that there's going to be some other kind of different behaviors. Were you just like sleeping? Have you been like what could maybe have caused you to maybe have a little bit of a heavier kind of behavior? Um yeah, are you
uh,
hungover or something? Like what? like
wait, you
yeah,
mean
like
like
before
right
this
now?
lesson, was there anything that you were doing that was like in preparation for the lesson or um
Um, I remember being kind of mad. Not like super mad, but I was a little pissed because I bought something that was on sale, but the person did not check it out as if it was on sale. And I do know, like, one of the biggest barriers for me right now, now that I do understand the concepts of weight and size, is controlling, like, how moods and
yeah.
situations affect it. So, unfortunately, whenever I am angry, or even if I'm pissed, it does make quite a difference. I wonder if in my brain it's just like easier to express because I do find myself sometimes wondering, like I don't really know how to say good morning. Like I'll have like many false starts when I'm actually out there in the world and at my job, and eventually I'll just like give up on trying to, prepare what the expression of my voice is going to be. But some days are better than
Okay.
others. I will say that. Like, if I'm very dehydrated, that will tighten up my range quite a lot, and my voice will be very thin. So I tend to get clocked more when that happens. I also wonder if people mishear my name a lot because Vaan sounds like a last name, if you think about it. Um, and then if someone is like, "Oh, well." that's a woman, right? Then they'll hear like Yvonne or stuff like that because usually they'll ask me, "Oh, how do you spell that?" And that's how I know that there is
Uh-huh.
like confusion
Uh-huh.
going on. So that could be influencing it too. It's not a name like Bob or
Where
Rick.
there's no
Um,
ambiguity. Yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's a little
yeah.
bit out there,
Okay. Okay. That also
right?
makes sense as a possible source.
So I think those are
Cool.
like
I love
influencing
that
factors
assessment. I think that that's because I just think in general,
for sure.
I mean, the sound I'm hearing is pretty heavy. It's pretty large. What happens if you like get yawny? Uh.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Like
feel like
this a little
yawning.
bit. I
Yeah,
don't know if I
I go
really
like,
got bigger.
hey.
Oh, oh my. Hey. That's this is kind of what I get with like very little preparation, but I guess this is a bigger
You guys
sound.
just take a
Does it
clip.
sound
I'd
like
love
it?
for you to tell me what you think.
Hello. It does sound a little bit bigger. I can definitely feel my throat going, "Whoa, we did not warm up for this." So I'm like, crap. But yeah, I think it's interesting to put weight out there. It doesn't require a whole ton of warm ups for me, but I will notice I tend to do better with my size throughout the day if I sing a lot of songs in the car beforehand, or if I don't, I'm kind of that's also usually the first thing to go. Actually, um, size was the simplest thing for me to understand, but if I guess if I'm in a situation where I'm not prepared for and I kind of just switch to a script, I
Okay.
think my size
Okay.
is the first
I
thing to
can
go.
I can see that happening. No, it makes total
I don't
sense.
know if that makes sense.
Have you had a chance to listen to clip three
Yeah.
here for with kind of an ear towards that size?
Oh, I
Perfect,
have not.
perfect.
I'll listen to it now. From what I heard in that, there was definitely a change, but it seems like I might actually have to do some I might be in need of some either size related warm ups or ways to relax my throat to allow for more size. Because for me, at least, size is like a very physical thing.
Okay.
It requires a lot of stretching, so it seems like that's a bit constricted. And if that's happening now, I think even more in my day to day, that I might be needing some extra steps to just kind of
Cool.
put me off in a better
Let's try
position in the
something here
mornings.
that is going to be like what can we how can we start to approach this larger size and maintain it more comfortably? Can you we're gonna do a size scale and I want you to get small. Can you go like hey.
Hey.
And
Hey.
now do the opposite. Can you start with hey.
I'm about to yawn. Okay. Hey.
How did that feel?
Hey. Hey.
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was a
I
little bit of
lost my
the
my
vowel
bowels there for a
identity
second.
distortion.
Very. Yeah, I've I found ways to like combat that with like my mouth shape, but I just it wasn't in my brain at the time. Um, that felt that felt hard to do, not painful to do. but hard to do and like to keep up
Yeah.
in a day-to-day
It sounds
conversation.
like you might benefit from kind of doing these like, like starting quite small. Hey, hey, hey. If I get like a really small and heavy sound, it's gonna sound like kind of gnome like. Hey, 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 hey. And as I get larger, it starts to get maybe a little bit woofier or that kind of under full quality. But I think if you do that, you'll start to feel like, what is that feeling like? And then, like, how can I start to balance that with the weight? So listen to four, see what happens, see what you think of the size change there, and then let's see if we can reproduce it.
Sounds like a plan.
Well,
Oh, did I click on the wrong? Yeah, I clicked on the wrong thing. All right, hold on. It was interesting how my initial instinct was to increase my weight instead.
instead,
So that was interesting.
yeah. I
I
didn't
don't know
process
if you
that.
heard
To
that.
me, it sounds like you are getting a larger size. Let me listen again and see if we can hear the weight shift that you're hearing.
Yeah, I definitely did get a larger size. But there was a moment where
Yeah,
the
I can
weight
hear that. That
increased
there's like,
first.
hey, 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 and then you start changing getting larger from there. Interesting. To my ear, that initial sound might have been just like, right, because you don't
Right.
want to go, hey, 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 and get this kind of under full quality really fast. Although shooting for under fullness, that's kind of like mismatched size, the size is really big, but the weight is really light, might be useful as a way of like finding that extremely large size. And then you could like see if you could layer back in some heavier weight sounds to see if you can find that balance again. So let's try the same thing. We're going to try it, but we're going to start lighter and start with like a small light sound like this. Hey, hey, and now you're gonna get heavier. Or excuse me, wow, you're gonna get larger. Hey, 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 hey. And if it kind of goes to like a Patrick Star kind of place, that's okay.
I'll definitely try it. I'll definitely go for it. Hey, 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 hey.
Yeah, the hey,
Really hard to do the
hey.
Y at that point.
Let's
Um,
listen to it, and then I
did you
want to
want me
see
to
if we
try
can
again?
start there and maybe layer on some additional weight. So go ahead and listen there.
There definitely seems to be like that threshold where I kind of struggle after a certain point. Um, but yeah, definitely
Cool, cool.
think I've definitely found
I
my
love
area
the
of
sound here
improvement
that you're
for
getting. It's
sure.
really large. It relative to the weight, it's obviously I think it's too large for how light the sound is here at 5, but I think we're about to resolve this right now. So I want you to go, hey, 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 hey. And then when you find that lighter kind of Patricky, starry kind of sound, I want you to then get like, hey, 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 and see if you can layer on some weight. I don't imagine it will be, that easy, but see what happens if you start to lean into the heavier weight sound.
For sure. All right. Hey, 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 hey,
I'm gonna
hey.
grab that. Give that a listen. I
That
agree.
was actually, I mean, at least I think that was actually pretty good. I may have lost
Yeah,
some of
and
the
I actually don't
size,
think you
but I
lost that
think I
much of the
held
size at
on to
all. I
most
think
of
you're
it.
still just like listening for that fullness, and I think you can still perceive there's a little bit of a mismatch between how heavy you are and how light you are, or wow, how heavy you are and how large you are. That there's just like you're a little bit large, so it still has like kind of that woofy under full sound. Um, and this might also feel like it has an element to it that's a little bit more pressurized or like you're trying harder to produce the sound. And I don't think that that's surprising in this context, right? When we start looking at any kind of extreme sound, whether it's an extreme high note, extreme low note, extreme weight in either direction, extreme size in either direction, there's going to be some sound of atypicality. And we can hear that it sounds like a little bit put on. It won't
Right.
forever, and eventually it's going to ease up a little bit that sound of like, wow, I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel, which I get when I'm looking at my heaviest, largest sizes too. My students comment all the time when I show them size. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, it sounds like your that really heavy sound sounds a little strained." And I know that it feels pretty comfortable in my body, but like when I go for it, it sounds that way because it sounds like I'm not used to it. And guess what? I'm sure I'm not used to being at my heaviest, largest sizes all the time. But if I were to live there longer or even spend like, 30 seconds to a minute every single day really trying to pursue those sounds, uh, we'd I guess multiple times per day would be ideal. Then I would start to get some additional ease in production. And part of what I think the strategy is for this extreme weight, extreme size, is to explore what the sort of maximum value is and get comfortable there, but then not necessarily live at your maximum value. This is kind of the same idea that we apply in feminization, right? People aren't necessarily looking for their smallest, lightest sounds 100% of the time. During practice, we look for our smallest, lightest sounds so that we can find what that feels like and then relax into something a little bit bigger and a little bit heavier. And the same, I think, is true here. You want to find your largest, heaviest sound and then, like, back off a little bit. And when you back off a little bit, it should still stay nice and full. It should still stay large and heavy, but not necessarily sound like you're like really struggling to produce those sounds. I'm kind of curious what would happen if you try this same sequence but at a higher pitch. So I'm going to grab a
Right.
specific pitch reference here. What happens if we try this on the F? Can you go like hey, 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 but like at that pitch range?
Um,
No worries.
sorry, my brain
Down
is getting
here,
confused on
first we'll
which
match.
octave.
Hey.
Um, are,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, you're
hey,
great.
oh,
You're
okay.
great. I don't know. Yeah,
I was
maybe
about to
you're
go
hearing
up
this
the
a
octave for
really
whatever reason.
prominent second harmonic from me or something. But yeah, this
Okay.
is good. Hey, hey. Uh,
Okay. You wanted me to go from light
light
to
and
heavy?
small to heavy and large. So both of these. So hey, 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 hey. And maybe if
Oh,
size goes first and then you fill in with that heavier weight, that also will work for me.
okay. I'll give it my best shot. Hey, 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 hey,
Yeah,
hey.
let me grab that.
I don't know. Ooh,
Hit play there.
yeah. I think I could. I think I could definitely try again. I'm not sure if that was. I don't think that was my heaviest or my largest. Um, I think I'm unused to like
Yeah.
coordinating
Why don't
the
we
both
try
of those
then one at a
elements,
time? Why don't
like,
you just first start with like, hey, hey, hey,
but
hey, hey, and aim for that larger sound first, and then start to layer in that heavier weight. No, no problem.
yeah, yeah, I definitely think that that might be easier. Thank you. All right. Hey, 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 hey. Ah, it's
Is
I did
everything
it yesterday. I
okay in
told you this.
there?
I'm
What's
sorry. That
going
was my
on? Are
boyfriend.
you yelling?
He thought I was like calling for
Hey,
him, so
hey,
he
hey,
was like,
dude.
"What the fuck do you want?" Like,
Yeah.
just me.
No, not you, babe.
He fell asleep, so I think he was
Highly relatable.
disoriented. Jeez. All right.
Go ahead and hit play on clip 8. Compare it to clip 7. Tell me which one has your preference, I guess.
I think I think the second one was better. I also think I wonder if I'll get better at that exercise as I grow more comfortable with manipulating size. I wonder if I've been neglecting that element because it was the first one I learned, and also that
Ooh,
I
that is a really
prioritize
important point,
normalcy over
right?
growth a little
Finding
bit, I
a
think.
more normalized and typical kind of speech, but actually we kind of need to like maybe pursue something that is a little bit abnormal, atypical, like, and then start to get used to that and see what happens, so that you have something to like sort of like feel like, okay, what does that stretched kind of feeling feel like, and then live there for a little bit. I think that I agree. I think that 8 is a stronger example. It sounds a little easier. It sounds a little bit less um, like I'm less worried that other stuff is going to happen, like constriction, or that you're going to force something or really push something with that, size and weight at the same time. I think that there's a tendency to potentially start to introduce um, unwanted behaviors. So yeah, I liked that like get larger first, and it doesn't matter if the weight's there yet,
Right.
and then start to layer in the weight, and then see what that sounds like. I will say, yeah, I really think that the balance that you do find is really good. So just see if like to what extent manipulating that size against weight, if you can hear those little shades of fullness as you're looking for like, is this full? Is this full? Right? Like what feels like it's an actually full sound, and what starts to feel like it's like over full, that like really buzzy quality, or what feels like it's like under full, like more of that Patrick Star kind of hollow sound. The more that you're able to explore those kinds of shades of gray, the better you're going to be at targeting changes to both size and weight simultaneously. Because you won't be thinking of like, okay, let me control my size, let me control my weight at the same time. Instead, you'll think, let me control fullness from woofy and hollow to a more full sound. And that can tend to be a little bit easier to produce. I want. Let's with the caveat that I think that this is really strong, and I'd love to continue
Definitely.
working on this as we go forward. For now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the personality implying features of the voice, because yeah, I think that this is just like you need to spend some more time like actively hunting for these coordinations, and really starting to make them feel a little bit more stable and comfy in your body. So for now, let's take a look at some personality stuff. So we go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Um, I did send a link for I don't know if it's like the best reference I'll find ever. Um, but just something that sort of had that, I guess, the type of fullness that I wanted. And what I learned when I was looking for that voice, um, was that men surprisingly have a lot of
Yeah.
variation when it
Yeah.
comes to fullness, like a ton of variation. Um, so so I was really looking for something that I thought had very good balance between size and weight, with I guess with an extra emphasis of sort of minimizing like any type of brassiness without sounding underfull. So um there's that. I guess I also don't really know what the personality parts of the voice are, like what terms to use. I do know um that like pitch movements are a big thing. People tend to have different styles of
Yeah.
pitch movements and cadences and things like that, and speech patterns. Um, so so I've definitely learned that I do appreciate some dynamicism, because whenever I try to like talk monotone, I feel like I'm limiting myself in terms of like that's not how I want to express myself. And I was also dissatisfied when I did find a reference that had a good balance of what I liked, but
Yeah.
only seemed to
Yeah.
stay
Here,
within
here, let's
a
talk about
certain
so
range.
one
Um,
personality. Well, I guess let's take one step back and we'll just take a look at some of the like broad level stuff for 1 second, and then we'll go into some of what we're talking about here with specific elements because I want you to have some specific labels for what needs to change. And yeah, cool. So if we think that there are like when we listen to a voice, we
right.
hear all of these features of the sounds. We hear size, weight, fullness. We hear pitch, nasality, overall degree of efficiency. We hear um, all of these personality elements, like what the pitch contour is, what the like what all of this stuff. We hear it all at once. We're not listening to a voice and going like, "Oh yeah, what an interesting pitch contour this person is exhibiting," because that would be alien as fuck, right? Well, part of the problem is that in order to excel at this, we kind of have to become these kind
Right.
of alien mutant listeners and start to listen to voices in ways that I don't think are is normal for the average person in the population. So that's step one. Sorry, go ahead. Please,
Definitely.
please do.
Um,
Please take your
do
time.
you mind if I? I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I use the restroom very quickly?
Do, 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 do,
Awesome.
do, 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 do.
Thank you so much.
We'll just listen to this one cricket outside my window and fireworks. I turned up the volume on my monitor and now I feel like I can hear every single sound in my apartment. No, no problem. So, right, we're
All
going to
right,
turn
I'm
ourselves
back.
into kind
Thank
of
you so
mutant
much.
listeners. Part of this is identifying how to categorize some of these changes. So we might think that we can separate these into two broad categories, pardon me. And the first category would be body implying features. These are features of the voice that we can hear that make some kind of implication about you know, the speaker's body, right? So that's going to be something like, things like efficiency, whether the voice sounds like it's really efficient or whether it sounds like it's inefficient, is going to tell us something about the speaker's wellness, whether they sound like they're really like have a totally functioning voice, or if they feel like, if I were talking like this, you'd be like, "Oh, are you okay? You sound a little sick." And I'd be like, "Yeah, I'm feeling under the weather," or whatever. You can hear that quality because the inefficiency in the sound is signaling that my body is a little unwell. Inefficiency can also tell us a little bit about a person's age. If I were talking like this, you'd hear it and you'd be like, "Oh, this person sounds a little bit older." And I'd be like, "Yeah, get off my lawn, blah, whatever." Right? We can hear that kind of quality. Um, as conveying something about the body. Size and weight are other
Mm-hmm.
features that tell us a little bit about the speaker's sexual development, right? If we hear a larger size, heavier weight, we're going to imply about that speaker some things, right? We're going to just assume a more masculine sexual development if they're heavy and large. So all of those are body related and body implying features that are really important to master, but we can also hear that there are certain personality implying features of the voice that are also really important to start to piece together. And these can include things like a pitch and pitch contour. What is the contour of a person's overall speech? Another um, personality implying feature is um, sort of rhythm and stress. How does the person speak? Um, what kind of pauses do they take? What is the degree of like connection between different words? Um, and is there space between those words? Or is everything really fluidly flowing together? In general, when we have a high degree of fluidity in pitch contour and in rhythm and stress, we start to hear that fluidity as more feminine. So if I were to like go for a very large and heavy sound, and I'm gonna get a very monotonous kind of speech, so I'm even just eliminating pitch contour, everything is just one single note the whole time, and I'm gonna keep talking like this with little pauses and spaces between the words, one, two, three, four, five, with like little, just tiny little gaps. If I make those gaps a little bit bigger, right, we can hear that this starts to give a very staccato, separated kind of quality between each word. And then as I start to get closer and closer together, then eventually they blend together and start to bleed into one another. And this is going to start to sound a little bit more feminine. Another way that we might think personality can be implied is through how we imply this stress. Sometimes people will stress with volume. Like if I'm speaking and then suddenly like I went to the zoo today and I want to specify that I went to the zoo today, I might stress the word today by increasing my volume. I went to the zoo today and I'm suddenly a little bit louder, a little bit heavier, and we perceive that as being a little bit more stressed within the context of the word. Well, feminine speakers tend to elongate words to stress them. So instead of I went to the
Right.
zoo today, a feminine speaker might say, I went to the zoo today, and really stretch out the word today in a way that indicates like this is the most important
Right.
word in the sentence, right? So that elongation is another trait that we might want to listen for. And then finally, we are also going to listen for how the speaker pronounces words. What is the pronunciation like? There are certain ways we kind of universalize the experience of language, and we think like, oh yeah, I'm pretty much speaking the same way that my boyfriend speaks. I'm pretty much speaking the same way my sister speaks. My sister and I grew up in the same household. We should therefore have the same pronunciation features of the voice. Well, what we find is that actually there are ways that depending on your assigned gender at birth, people model certain speech behaviors to you that are a little different depending on how they perceive you. So because of that modeling, we kind of pick up different kinds of
Right.
pronunciation. We might think that pronunciation can be broken down to two sort of categories: the pronunciation of consonants and the pronunciation of vowels. These are interrelated, so they feed off of one another. If I am changing my pronunciation of my consonants, my vowels are also going to shift around. If I change my vowels, my consonants are also going to change. But in general, we can think that maybe we can isolate those during practice as a way just to get our brains wrapped around those. So right now, I'd like to talk about fluidity in pitch contour because I think it's a really important sort of sound feature to listen for in sort of personality. Um, but before, sorry, go ahead.
I I do have I don't know if it's a question or just something interesting of note. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
is I forgot the term for stress. Sorry, rhythm and stress, right? Um, do some people also stress their words through pitch? Because I wonder if that's something that I do or something that I also look for, and I guess something that I don't want to eliminate
Yeah, well,
necessarily, but
here's the
kind of
thing, and that's
rein
actually
in.
kind of like adjacent to the
I don't
point
know
I
if
was
that's a
just going to make,
thing,
which is perfect,
but
which is none of these things are 100% missing from everyone's speech, from any one person's speech, right? Like, even the most masked dude is going to stretch out a word here or there every once in a while as a way
right,
to elongate a sound. Every once in a while, a really masked dude is gonna still like have a fluid pitch contour sometimes. And the degree to which we're allowed to kind of play around with that depends on some of these other features. I would say that when, our body related features, our body implying features are very squarely heavy and large enough that it's like unquestionably masculine, then you can start to do all kinds of things, right? Like this is part of what gives, like that effeminate male sound of like, if I really make all of these adjustments to size and weight, if I'm gonna keep, rather I keep my size and weight the same, they're very heavy and large, and now I'm really intentionally starting to speak in a very fluid way, right? This still sounds male to me. It still sounds identifiably male, even though I'm being really intentionally feminine in my personality, implying features, the sort of pitch contour and stuff like that is all really dialed into a feminine place. Well, if the size and the weight are solidly masculine, then I don't really have to care and I can exhibit any features I want. I'm allowed to. I have a lot more freedom. If we start to find these corner cases, and often this is what kind of the case that I find in people who are feminizing, is they'll get smaller and lighter, but not necessarily like to a place that feels unquestionably small enough and light enough that it's like signaling the level of de-androgenization that we need. And then if you're like here and you're like, not quite not quite light enough and not quite small enough, and you're not actively trying to use feminine personality features, like right now, I feel like I'm smaller and lighter, but I don't necessarily feel like I am as small or as light as I could go. And my personality features are a little bit more masculine. The gender of this speaker is much more questionable to me. I'm unsure how I would
right,
gender this voice if I were to listen to it on a phone call. You know what I mean? Whereas, oh, sorry, go ahead.
right. I completely understand. I wonder if I definitely understand. In a nutshell, um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I forgot the term, but the body implying features is that yeah, the body implying features are definitely they offer a lot more
Yes.
flexibility as long as it's
Yeah,
extreme enough
yes. So
in terms
here's
of
what's so important, right?
outside perception at
None of these
least.
things are written in stone. None of these things are things that you have to do. But often, if you do, basically people are listening to your voice and weighing it in their brains and they're categorizing it like, okay, well, it sounds masculine enough. Cool, put it in the mask box. And then you get a sir. Or put it in the fem box, put it in, and then say ma'am. And we're just kind of subconsciously thinking this way. We're not really thinking about those individual elements or anything. We're just kind of like perceiving the sound and categorizing it. Well, if we are really relying on these personality implying features, it's our way of taking a thumb and really pressing down on the scale so that it lands on the side that we want it to land on. So like back to this kind of like in between voice I was using a second ago, if I were like intentionally
Right.
masculinizing the like the behaviors of this voice, not the body related stuff, but like the personality related stuff, it starts to sound more masculine. And if I were to like really intentionally try to feminize those personality related features, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, hey, ma'am, how are you? Right? But the size and the weight are relatively similar. But because I'm intentionally saying, like, hey, actually, please perceive me as
Right.
femme right now, I'm like really actively leaning into those those personality implying features in a way that makes the sound more feminine and more likely to be gendered the way I want it to be gendered. So, yeah, exactly. They're like
Right. So
the
they're
thing that like
definitely
if the
helpful.
body and the weight, if the size and the weight are kind of like androgynous, they can take the sound definitely to one or the other because the brain just will perceive all of those features and go like, okay, cool, all right, done. So I want to talk about pitch a little bit and play around because I think that there is this kind of assumption that masculine pitch
Right.
is all monotonous, and I think that that's wrong. I think that's a fallacy, and it actually, yeah. Yeah, and I hate when people say it because it's like very clearly
I
just not
also think
correct.
it's wrong.
Do some men default to a
Yeah.
monotonous sound? Yes, but those men are not very expressive men. And if we listen to expressive male voices, which like for 29 years of my life I thought I was like, just like being an expressive dude, you know what I mean? So like I had a voice that was highly expressive and still was actively masculine. So there's a lot of potential for this expressivity that isn't explored, I think, often. And right, this idea that like, oh yeah, well, feminine pitch moves and masculine pitch doesn't is such an oversimplification in a way that I think it really undermines the listener. It makes it harder for students to know what to do because there is a change that matters, and it's the fluidity or what I call the angularity of the pitch motion. And I'm going to illustrate what I mean here for a second. I'm going to go back to um like a very masculine sound. And right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk at a really wide pitch range. I'm going to start really high and then go really low. And as I'm talking right now, you're going to hear me kind of bouncing around between these very various pitches, really low pitch, really high pitch, and then kind of stuff in between. And the thing that makes this sound more masculine is not like a limited pitch range. Like if I were just to talk down here and just be really monotonous the whole time, that's not actually making it sound more masculine to me at all. I was already sounding pretty solidly masculine a second ago. I can get really high and I can get really low in pitch. Da, 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 da. Like that's a pretty high pitch right there. You know what I mean? And it still sounds like a dude talking. Why? Because the motion in between the pitches from up here all the way down here. I'm like jumping back and forth. I'm going to do the same thing now, but I'm going to add a lot more connective tissue. I'm going to start being a lot more fluid. So I'm going to start at the same high pitch and then start to work my way down. I'm going to go back to the middle and start to then come back down again. And then when I'm low, I'm going to be down here and I'm still going to be really fluid. And then as I start to ascend, I'm going to start continuing this fluidity as I start to ascend to higher and higher pitches. And to my ear, this suddenly starts to sound a little bit less masculine. Would you agree?
I would definitely agree. I think I struggled to identify what my current personality implying speech patterns
Uh-huh.
are. Um, it seems like now I'm starting to understand what other things there are to manipulate, but now I also have to
Yes.
figure out, well, where do I currently stand on these things? And I think that's very interesting. I also think I think like subconsciously it's a little easier to start doing it because I have you to model right now. Um but I do work with a lot of amazing women and very femme people. Um and I think that makes it a little difficult to
No,
be like,
yeah.
well, I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
just mirror the people around me. I don't know if people struggle with that, but um I was practicing with another trans masculine person recently for the first time ever in this server because we hard to find, right? And it was a much different experience. Just in terms of like the mirroring issue not being such a big thing. But yeah, like I think I'm also like I'm
Yeah.
having this moment of kind of
Yes. This
holy
is the thing
crap.
that people kind
Well,
of
what
lump
are
this stuff.
my
I mean, they'll be like, "Oh
personality
yeah," and
implying
then
speech
there's
patterns?
extra stuff, and it doesn't really
You know?
matter. But it does, and then it it fully does, right? Because it also lets you be like, maybe I want to sound like a
No,
gay dude. You know what I mean? Like I when I was younger would have
yeah,
killed to be able to sound more like a heterosexual guy because I thought like, oh, this will help me pass, under the radar. And now when I do want to use a masculine voice, am much more prone to trying to intentionally kind of model more sort of like gay sounding voices because I like being, I like signaling that I'm queer in some way. So for sure, like these are some changes that once you start to hear them, they become really, really crucial in the way that they can help you sort of like, mm, just like present in the way that you actually want to and not in like the way that you have to, if that makes sense. You start to have like some aesthetic choices. Go ahead.
that does make sense. Um, I I think I have like the opposite issue in terms of um like the friend drive, right? Imagine I had a button in my brain
Uh-huh.
that was like, oh, be friendly, right? Way too easy to hit. Uh, so whenever I do encounter someone that I know is also part of the part of the queer community, right? Um, instead of instead of sort of signaling, hey, me too, I just go complete either femme or I guess what's called I don't
Uh-huh.
know if a gay voice really exists, but obviously what society perceives to be what a gay man sounds like, right? Um, but that's not necessarily how I want my expression to sound either. Um, so it's a very interesting thing, you know? I'll very much go woo,
Yeah.
and I don't
Yeah.
even hit that mark, right? Like I just go dead voice, basically. I guess currently because I can't manipulate or I don't know how to manipulate those individual factors yet, my brain is lumping all of my voice qualities together and then just like
Yes.
throws
And
my
this is
voice
exactly
into the
why it's
fem
so
section
important to
to be like, okay, yeah, we're
because
gonna
you're
be
bundling
friendly,
all of these
you know?
behaviors together because you don't know how to
And
separate
it's
them because behaviorally they all went
very
together
counterproductive.
before and now you're just trying to move away and you don't really know how to find those individual features. That makes complete sense to me. Um, so let's try mimicking here. We're gonna do a little bit of some broad pitch change and we're just gonna see like I want you to go like high, low, high, low. Cool. Now we're going to intentionally make that
Okay.
motion fluid. So we want you
High,
to go
low,
high,
high, low.
low, high, low. Good. And I think you could even be more fluid. I want you to start with that L on
High,
the higher
low,
syllable. So you're
high,
going to go like
low.
high,
Yeah.
low on the higher pitch. High, low, high, low. So you're really sliding the whole time through. Yeah. And
Right.
that is a very
High,
fluid
low,
motion.
high,
And if you really
low,
wanted to, I
high,
think it's very
low.
dramatic and fun to have a more fluid sound. But if we're trying to be more sort of intentionally masculine, we want to aim for a more angular motion downward. So we're going to go back to that kind of choppy high, low, high, low, high, low. Nice. I want you to say, hey, how are you?
High, low, high, low, high, low. Oh snap! Okay, wait,
You're
no.
doing
I'm sorry,
great.
the light bulb just went
Hey,
off.
how are
Okay.
you?
I'm sorry, one more time? I got way too ahead of myself.
Cool. And now we're going to do it really fluid. Hey, how are you?
Hey, how are you?
Yeah, how are you? That was good. And let's now go back to the more angular.
Hey,
Hey,
how are
how are
you?
you?
Doing good.
Yeah, and even that last you had a little movement in
Hey,
it. Hey,
how are
how are
you?
you? Keep it a little bit more flat. You.
It did.
Yeah. Now be careful, right? Because if we really try to constrain it, sometimes it can end up sounding
Hey,
like,
how are
"Hey, how
you?
are you?" And we sound a little like a robot, right? But that's the goal, right? I mean, not the robot sound, but like a little bit more of that angularity. A
All right.
voice that I think is really cool to listen for this with is if you go on YouTube and you listen to old speeches of Barack Obama, because Barack Obama would signal really broad pitch changes but would always be very angular, and there was always some little bit of space between these words that he's saying so that you know that it's not very feminine. It's not like he's moving very fluidly between those broad pitches. He really is just kind of like jumping from low to high and high to low. And that's going to be one way that we can kind of listen for that kind of expressivity. You can be an expressive guy, and really get broad changes in pitch and show like, whoa, I'm really excited about that. But if you go like, whoa, I'm really excited about that, it starts to sound a little bit different if it's too fluid. Does that make sense?
It does. I think what's really the kicker when I answer the phone and things like that, I think a lot of
Ho
my
ho
greetings
ho.
tend to
You're
have
like copy pasting
tons of fluidity,
behaviors
more so
without
than my
thinking about
normal
it just because
speech,
subconsciously
if
you're
that
like, hey,
makes
how are
sense.
you?
I think I'm exactly. I'll be like, I think if we went back to my earlier greeting of this is Von Rumdahall calling from Wonderland. I'm asking about, see how
Yeah.
there is so much, um, there's
This
a
is
lot
something that I
more
was actually going to
fluidity
congratulate you
than
on.
if I'm just talking to somebody that I know. I'm
Yes.
not really,
Yes. No, I mean, like, I don't think your voice is
so it's not
particularly
necessarily that
fluid,
it's
but
all
you might
bad.
fall into it sometimes.
Oh, thank you. I'm, I'm kind of realizing, right. And that's, it's a bit of a relief to know just, because sometimes I think my friends are being nice to me. Like, oh, you sound mask, you look mask. Like I don't really have an issue. And I'm like, really? And then I'll be on the phone
I'm
and
I'm hearing
it's
you. I'm hearing
at
you
work
do it now.
specifically and it's a
Also,
whole
you're doing
different
such a great job at
ball game.
modeling the
Um
angular kind of motion that we're
so
looking
now
for.
I
That's
kind of
so good.
understand a
You're
little
doing
bit
awesome.
better.
Um, no, you're. It's hard. It's freaking difficult.
Thank you. It's a struggle actually. I'm but I wasn't really able to even pick out the difference when I was listening to voice references. So I think that was really what was holding back a lot of the progress was you can't
Done.
notice
That's
something
literally
if you
it.
don't know
You
it's
need to be
there,
shown
and you
what those
can't
changes are so that you can
change
start to pay
something without
attention to them.
awareness.
Some people are capable of like his hearing it and just knowing, right? But I'd say the vast majority of people aren't processing sound in that way. I think it's really important to start to listen and say, okay, well, um, who are some sample voices? And for example, I think if you go look at Barack Obama, that's going to be a good choice. If you listen for who else is a good option? Someone like Robin Williams and Jack Black, who are both, I think very obviously masculine speakers, but they're both really willing to like go really really high and really really low in pitch, and you can really hear that the whole time it doesn't really matter. It continues to sound masculine because they're wild and crazy and really expressive, but they were like really going high. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
a 10,000
Ultimate
years.
cosmic power. Itty bitty living
Yeah.
space. Yeah.
Oh man, I kind of feel like I have like mental whiplash from yeah. No, because now I'm like, well, even just thinking about like not even listening to Robin Williams right
Yeah.
now, but just
Yeah.
even thinking
It
about
becomes
some of his
something that you can then
deliveries, I'm like,
hear and be like,
oh,
"Oh,
that
sorry,
makes a
go
lot
ahead."
more sense now. And that's only one of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we have
No, I was just
there's
saying that's
a
only one
bunch
of
more, right? If we listen
the
to that kind of
personality
staccato
implying
quality,
features.
that's another one that I think Barack is we're on a first name basis, Barack and me. Former President Barack Obama is a really good voice sample for listening for those a little bit of that space in between words and giving just a little bit of time, just to isolate a word a little bit, so that it kind of has its own space rather than kind of blending and flowing from one word to the next. That's also going to be something. Masculine speech patterns are going to be a little more consistent in time, is I think another way to think about this is feminine speech patterns will go, quite slow and elongate some things and then really rapidly change and start to be much faster paced. And you'll start to hear, like, because I'm building excitement, I'm going to start speaking even faster and faster and faster, but then I might slow down to like really start to like build and like express something here and take my time to really stretch out the meaning of a sentence or to like really emphasize a word or a point, but then I might go back to a faster tempo. And masculine speech, I think, is much more just likely to just be consistently the same da 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 da, just not really changing the rhythm at all, and just kind of keeping it all the same pace the whole time. And that is also going to be something that we're going to hear from masculine voices that I think is really important to also kind of key in on. Um, Pronunciation we can't even break down today because I just think we're out of time in terms of everything. And I want you to be able to spend some time thinking about pitch and like rhythm a little bit more. But pronunciation makes a huge fucking difference, and we'll talk about it at some point because I really want you to like hear some of these differences, but they
Definitely.
are each their own kind of like we have to spend 20 minutes getting you a light bulb moment for each one of these kinds of features too. So we'll take some time in the future and see if we can find another lesson time for you because I think it's going to be really useful to have that at your disposal. So cool. Do you have any questions about any of the stuff that we covered tonight so far, in terms of pitch contour, angularity, that like a little bit of the rhythm and pacing stuff that we talked about?
Yeah, not really. I think I did have sort of a light bulb moment for rhythm. I think subconsciously I was trying to work towards that, but
Yeah.
I more so
Yeah.
just had the impression of I need to take my time a little
Cool.
more. I
Yeah,
didn't
I'm gonna
know
go ahead
anything
and I'm gonna just kill the
besides
bot for
that,
now and send you
So it's definitely extremely helpful.